The old gardener worked in silence. His calloused hands touched the earth as if talking to an old friend. While everyone else saw only grass and flowers, he saw memories, roots that held secrets. On the mansion's balcony, the billionaire watched him for the last time. No one knew it, but that would be the last sunset the two would share. The sea wind brought the smell of rain and time. Antonio lifted his face, feeling the salt and longing. 30 years taking care of that garden, 30 years without imagining that he was stepping on his own destiny buried under those flowers. "It's nice today, Antonio," said the boss, with the tired voice of someone carrying guilt. Antonio smiled without looking up. "It's beautiful to see what grows, even when no one else believes." The old man nodded, his eyes welling up. "I wanted to say something, perhaps a secret kept for decades, but silence won. And when he turned his back, he seemed to be saying goodbye to the world." At night, the storm arrived without warning. Lightning illuminated the garden, making the statues seem alive. From the balcony, Clara, the oldest maid, watched her boss, motionless, sitting in front of the glass. "He didn't eat. He didn't speak, he didn't sleep," he whispered. Antonio simply replied, "Maybe he's waiting for someone." In the middle of the night, the sound of thunder split the sky, and fate along with it. The whole house woke up with Clara's cry, "Antonio, come quickly!" The gardener ran through the halls, his heart racing. And there was the billionaire, eyes open but lifeless, standing in front of the window that overlooked the garden. In his hands, a brown envelope, with Antonio's name written in ink. The next morning, the whole town was talking about old Bastus's mysterious death. They say he left an inheritance that no one will find. They say it was the gardener who was with him last. But what no one knew was that in that envelope there was a phrase that would change everything. "The truth is in the roots." Antonio held the note with trembling hands. He looked at the garden one last time and understood that nothing there was just earth and flowers. It was the map of his past, the beginning of a secret buried for decades. And he was about to dig it up, even if it cost him everything. The registry office room smelled of old paper and varnish. Leather chairs creaked under impatient bodies. Helena Bastos arrived with the steps of someone treading new ground. Heirveil adjusted his tie like a closed fist in the air. Antonio stood in the background, cap in his hands, eyes on the ground. Dr. Lucio opened the folder as if opening a stage. His glasses slipped down his nose, measuring the hostile audience. "We will comply with the will expressed in a valid document." The word "valid" sounded like a hammer on a cold bench. The wall clock chewed up 3 seconds of tension. Donations to institutions and former employees were read. Company shares, real estate licenses, bonds and shares. The air became heavy when the expression "universal heir" appeared. Helena leaned forward, her smile calculated. Heirveil was already rehearsing a victory that seemed inevitable. "Antonio Rodriguez," said the lawyer, without raising his voice. The silence was first disbelief, then nervous laughter. Helena stood up, finger raised, asking for respect for the lineage. Heirveil muttered insults that the ceiling pretended not to hear. Antonio, pale, looked for a way out that didn't exist. "There is also an addendum written by Mr. Bastos." Dr. Lucio held up a sheet of paper marked with old ink. "For reasons of blood and heart, I leave everything to Antonio." The word "blood" made the air lose its way to the lungs. Clara put her hand to her mouth, holding back a very old scream. Helena went ahead, demanding an expert report, a report from the police and the press. The room became a courtroom, every glance a hasty verdict. Heirveil slammed the folder on the table, spitting accusations. The lawyer kept his voice warm and his words cold. "Challenges will have a procedure, but the will remains in force." Antonio tried to speak and stumbled on the first syllable. He said there must have been a mistake, a mixed-up name. He looked at Clara, searching for ground in her pupils. The old maid just nodded, her eyes wet. "You know how he felt," he whispered, almost soundlessly. At the end, the lawyer handed over a brown envelope, to be opened only by you, in private. Inside, a curved note: "The truth is in the roots." The handwriting was the boss's, firm despite the years. A small antique key was attached to it by linen thread. On the street, photographers chewed flashes and asked questions. "How do you feel, heir? How much is the garden worth now?" Antonio protected his face with his cap, avoiding the lights. Helena swore war, promised blood on letterhead. Raphael smiled briefly, as if he were already planning someone else's downfall. Back at the simple house, the rain beat down on the tin roof. Antonio placed the key next to his mother's portrait. The note lay on the table like a seed. "In the roots," he repeated, feeling the ground respond. And he decided that, at dawn, he would return to the mansion to listen to the earth. Dawn arrived damp, with mist descending over the hills like a weary bride's veil. Antonio walked along the cobblestone road with the envelope in his coat pocket, the weight of the paper feeling like lead. The crowing of the roosters mingled with the rustling of the eucalyptus trees, and the smell of wet earth filled his lungs. The note wouldn't leave his mind. "The truth lies in the roots," he repeated, like a mantra of someone trying to decipher their own life. Arriving at the old house where he had been born, he found the gate covered in ivy, the iron eaten away by rust and time. He entered slowly, stepping on dry leaves that crackled like bones underfoot. His elderly neighbor, Donna Minda, appeared at the window, her eyes sunken and her voice hoarse with longing. "I knew you would come back one day, young Antonio." He didn't understand where such certainty came from. Donna Minda invited him in, serving hot coffee and stale bread, in the manner of someone who still believes in kindness. The smell of coffee mixed with the dust of old furniture transported him back to his childhood. She showed him a faded photo, a smiling young woman in a gardening apron, a man in a white suit holding her hands. "Your mother worked for him before everything went wrong." The man's name, Bastos, seemed to echo in the air. Antonio was speechless. The silence stretched, thick as smoke. The neighbor told him that his mother had been thrown out of the mansion while pregnant, under accusations fabricated by the boss's wife. They said she dishonored the house, but nothing was ever proven. He held the photo with trembling hands, feeling the past begin to open its claws. The key in his pocket now felt warmer than before. Back in the city, the sky was overcast, and the sea roared against the cliffs. Antonio walked aimlessly until he stopped before the gates of the Bastos mansion. The guards, who had previously greeted him, now regarded him with disdain and suspicion. Still, he entered. He felt something inside calling him, something buried, waiting decades to be found. "The truth lies in the roots," he repeated again, looking at the trees in the garden. The mansion was colder than ever. Old Bastos's portrait still hung over the fireplace, with the eyes of someone who observes time and judges the living. Clara appeared in the hallway, wiping her hands on her apron. "I knew you'd come back," she said, unsurprised. She pointed to the back garden, where the soil looked freshly turned. He had it dug there a week before he died. He said he wanted to see the roots one last time. Antonio knelt before the flower bed and began digging with his bare hands. The damp earth slowly gave way, releasing the smell of iron and dead leaves. His nails became covered in mud, and sweat mixed with the light rain that was beginning to fall. Then something hard touched his fingers. A small, dark wooden box with the same carved seal as the will. The key he carried in his pocket fitted perfectly into the lock. Inside the box was a golden medallion, a lock of hair, and a piece of paper folded in four. The handwriting was unmistakable. "My son, if you are reading this, it means that the truth has finally returned to Earth." Antonio felt his world spin. The letter spoke of a forbidden love, a broken promise, and a guilt that old Bastos carried until the end of his life. That was only the beginning of the secret. The tears came without warning. The rain thickened as if the sky too had memories. Clara approached and hugged him wordlessly, as if comforting a belated mourning. "He knew you would return," she murmured. Antonio looked at the garden, where wilted flowers seemed to be reborn under the water. "I need to understand everything," he replied. And for the first time, he was no longer afraid to find out. That night, Antonio slept in the old servants' quarters, surrounded by the sound of the storm. The note, the letter, and the medallion lay on the table, illuminated by the flickering light of a candle. The wind creaked the windows, and something tinkled in the basement. He slowly got up and looked into the darkness. For the first time, he felt he was not alone in the mansion. The morning dawned cold, shrouded in a fog so thick that the mansion seemed to float. Antonio awoke to the distant sound of footsteps on the floorboards, but when he opened the door, no one was there. He went down to the basement, where light filtered through the cracks, revealing antique furniture covered in sheets and cobwebs. The medallion hung around his neck and seemed to pulse as if it held a still living heart. Among the boxes and portraits, he found an old metal trunk with the Bastos coat of arms engraved on the lid. He used the key from the smaller box, and surprisingly, it also worked for this padlock. Inside were yellowed papers, old pay slips, love letters, and a torn birth certificate. His mother's name was there next to an incomplete signature. Antonio Rodriguez Bastos. The impact knocked him back, as if the ground had disappeared. The truth began to emerge in cruel fragments. His mother had been expelled while pregnant, and old Bastos, unable to recognize him, swore that one day he would right the wrong. Motives of blood and heart. The words of the will made sense now, but why had all this been hidden for so many years? Clara appeared at the basement door, carrying a flickering flashlight. Her eyes carried the weight of decades of silence. "He tried to find you, Antonio. He sent letters, he looked for your mother, but no one would let him near." She sat on a crate, the sound of rain falling on the roof accompanying her confession. "His family threatened to ruin anyone who told the truth. I obeyed, out of fear." The gardener lowered his head, his chest tightening between anger and pity. Everything he'd thought was coincidence, the job, the old man's affection, the kind words, now became a thread connecting his fate to the man he called his boss. "He was my father." The words came out as a whisper, but the echo carried through the basement like thunder. Outside, Helena arrived by car, her steps firm and her gaze sharp. He had brought with him 2 lawyers and a photographer. "Have you come to take what isn't yours?" he asked, crossing his arms. Antonio, covered in dust and mud, responded with only a firm look. "I don't want what's yours. I want what was denied to my mother." Words hurt more than any blow. As the argument heated up, Clara pulled a small photograph from her pocket. Antonio's mother holding a newborn baby in her arms. The portrait was the final proof, and also the sentence Helena would never accept. The woman snatched the paper from Clara's hands and tore it, but not quickly enough to prevent Heirveil, who was with her, from seeing the baby's face. He paled. "My God, he looks just like his grandpa." The mood turned sour, like milk forgotten in the sun. Helena swore to contest everything, promising to destroy Antonio in court and in the newspapers. But Heirveil seemed shaken, torn between family loyalty and the truth before his eyes. "Helena, maybe he's telling the truth." The woman interrupted him with a slap to the face. "Shut up, kid. In this house, only I decide what's true." When the rain stopped, Antonio stood alone in the garden, watching the drops slide off the leaves. The medallion glowed faintly against his chest, and the wind whispered ancient names among the trees. He knew this was only the surface, that the Bastos family's true secret still slept in the shadows of the mansion, and he promised himself he would see it through. Night fell early over the mansion, as if the sky also feared what lived there. The sea wind made the windows shake, and the creaking of the floorboards seemed to follow Antonio's footsteps wherever he went. The mansion belonged to him now, but every wall whispered memories that didn't recognize him. In the main hallway, the portrait of old Bastos seemed to stare at him with glass eyes, testing whether his bastard son was worthy of the name. Clara followed him with a lamp, the flame flickering with every draught. "These walls hide more than gold," he murmured. Upstairs, a door opened by itself with a sharp click, and the wind scattered papers across the floor. They were old sheets of gardening notes, but some contained code words and old account numbers. He knew someone would betray him, Clara said, almost in a whisper. Antonio gathered up the papers and put them in his coat pocket. In the garden, the trees swayed in the storm, and lightning illuminated the cracked marble fountain. The sound of water echoed through the hallways, and he swore he heard a voice mingling with the wind, a voice calling his name. He climbed the stairs slowly, his heart beating in time with the rain. "Father?" he murmured, as if expecting an answer. In the library, the air smelled musty and reminiscent. The books, lined on oak shelves, seemed to be watching for his arrival. Antonio ran his fingers along the spines until he found a worn, green-covered volume titled The Garden of Eternity Inside, a photo of him as a child, hidden between the pages. On the back, Mr. Bastos's handwriting, so he never forgets where he came from. The gardener sat dazed and stared at the high ceiling, feeling the weight of a lifetime converging on that moment. Thunder shook the windows, and the lamp suddenly went out. Clara shouted his name from the hallway, and when he ran to her, he saw the door to the family's old wing wide open. A sharp chill pierced the air, and the scent of freshly extinguished candles filled the room. Inside, the room was untouched, as if time had stood still. Furniture covered in sheets, faded portraits, and a rocking chair still moving. On the floor, a silver box rested beneath a torn rug. Antonio knelt and lifted the lid. Inside, a small golden statuette and an audio tape labeled Lucio. He recognized the lawyer's name, the same one who had read the will. "It seems Mr. Bastos left more than just memories," Clara said, crossing her arms. Antonio placed the tape in the old recorder on the table, and the initial hiss filled the silence. Then the billionaire's voice echoed, "If anyone finds this, it means my death was not natural. I trusted someone I shouldn't have." The sound made Antonio's blood run cold. The recording continued, talking about betrayals, missing documents, and a secret account in the name of an unknown partner. "If I don't survive, I want the truth to come to light. My true heir will know what to do." The tape stopped there abruptly, as if fate had cut the thread. Antonio looked at Clara, who seemed to have aged 10 years in seconds. "The lawyer," she said. "He knew everything." At dawn, Antonio walked through the garden to the old tool shed, where the wind howled through the loose slats. The carp in the pond moved restlessly, as if sensing danger. On the horizon, headlights approached along the road, 2 black cars. "Helena," Clara murmured, turning off the lamp. The mansion was about to be engulfed in chaos again. The next morning dawned heavy, with heavy clouds over the sea. Helena and Raphael arrived accompanied by a group of lawyers and security guards. "You're not welcome here," she said, pushing open the gate as if invading the past. Antonio stood firm, his hands dirty with dirt, and the calm gaze of someone no longer afraid of loss. "The house is mine now, and what it holds too." The lawyers began taking photos and measuring walls, looking for flaws that would invalidate the will. Meanwhile, Antonio returned to the office, determined to find what his father mentioned on the tape. He ran his hands over the bookshelves and the paintings until a slight crack in the wall caught his attention. The hollow sound, when he tapped it with his knuckles, revealed what he was looking for. "Clara, bring the hammer," he said. Beneath the crumbling plaster, the metal rim of an old safe emerged. The engraved symbol was the same as the Bastos family seal, two intertwined leaves forming a circle. Antonio took a deep breath and inserted the key he'd kept since the will. The mechanism turned with a deep click, and the safe door swung open, revealing a stack of papers wrapped in red tape. On top was a handwritten letter with his name. The father's letters spoke of regret and love. He recounted how he had been deceived by his own lawyers and his wife, who hid his mother's pregnancy to preserve the family honor. "I couldn't fight them all," the text read, "but I fought hard enough for you to inherit more than just property. You inherited the truth." Alongside were copies of bank transfers, receipts, and a photograph of lawyer Lucio with Helena. Clara fought back tears, pointing to the wax seal on the bottom corner of the envelope. "That seal is the same one on the folder the lawyer took on the day of the reading." The revelation hit Antonio like a cold wave. The man his father had trusted was the very one who had betrayed him. "He's alive," Clara said, "and he knows you found what he hid." Antonio clutched the letter to his chest, feeling the urgency grow. Outside, Helena shouted orders to the security guards, demanding access to the office. Antonio hid the documents inside the chair cover and locked the door. "Tell her I'm busy watering her father's flowers," Clara said with bitter irony. The sound of hurried footsteps echoed in the hallway, followed by punches and threats. "You'll pay dearly for this, gardener." When the tumult subsided, the silence seemed even more dangerous. Antonio opened the window and saw the sea covered in mist, the waves crashing as if trying to warn him. The safe, now empty, reflected the grey light of dawn. At the bottom, an inscription engraved in Latin read, "The truth is under the roots. The truth is in the roots." That night, Antonio put the papers in an old folder and wrote his own letter, addressed to someone he could still trust. "If anything happens to me, take this to the police," he wrote, leaving it on the table. The mansion slept, but he knew the Bastos family's eyes never completely closed. Outside, on the wet road, the headlights of a parked car shone one last time before fading out. Inside, a silhouette watched the mansion, a telephone in hand. "He found the safe," the driver's voice said. On the other end, lawyer Lucio replied, "Then it's time to finish what the old man started." The sun rose heavily, hidden behind thick clouds that turned the sky to lead. Antonio had barely slept. His father's letter still echoed in his mind, along with the lawyer's cold voice on the recording. The mansion's phone rang early in the morning, a dry, insistent ring. When he answered, he heard only slow breathing, followed by a whisper, "You should have left everything buried." The line went dead, and the silence on the other end weighed more heavily than any threat. Helena Bastos wasted no time. That same morning, the headline in the local newspapers featured a photo of Antonio. Gardener forges will and tries to steal Bastos family fortune. The bold, distorted letters bled onto the paper. In the city's cafes, people whispered, and even former colleagues avoided him on the streets. The silent war was beginning, and Antonio was the only soldier on her side. At the mansion, Clara found him sitting at the table, the newspaper crumpled in his hands. "They're destroying you out there," she said in a shaky voice. He looked at her, weary but firm. "I don't need their approval. I only need the truth." Outside, photographers circled the gate and reporters shouted questions like hungry vultures. The old mansion had been transformed into an arena. That afternoon, an anonymous envelope arrived in the mail. with no return address. Inside was a single photo. Antonio talking to Mr. Bastos in the garden years before. On the back, a sentence written in red ink. "He chose you, but that condemns you." The gardener's blood ran cold. Clara recognized the handwriting. It's Helena's. She wants to scare you, but she also wants to know how far you'll go. Antonio didn't answer. He grabbed the hidden folder containing the documents and decided to take them to the city police station. On the way, he noticed a black car following him, keeping a constant distance. The winding road between the hills seemed narrower with each turn. When he parked at a gas station, the car drove slowly by and he saw the driver, lawyer Lucio. The man his father had trusted was now hunting him. Back at the mansion, the atmosphere was one of siege. Helena had hired security guards to protect the family's assets. Clara tried to hide her fear, but her eyes betrayed her concern. "He won't stop, Antonio. The lawyer knows that if the documents are released, it'll all be over for them." The gardener ran a hand over his face wearily, feeling the weight of fighting against powerful people. That night, the mansion seemed to breathe with him. Every creak of wood, every sound of wind sounded like a warning. Antonio locked the doors and windows, putting the documents away in a different place. The red photo still sat on the table, like a sentence waiting to be executed. The clock struck midnight, and then he heard footsteps, not his, not Clara's, echoing from the hallway. Following the sound, he went down to the office. The door was ajar, and a window had been forced open. When he entered, he noticed the drawers had been rummaged through. The safe was open and empty. The papers were gone. "It can't be," he murmured, desperation drying his voice. Mud marks on the window indicated someone had come from outside. Lucio had probably carried out his threat. On the floor, a torn note fluttered in the breeze from the open window. "If you want to see Clara again, bring the rest of the evidence." Antonio's blood ran cold. He ran through the hallways shouting the woman's name. No answer, only the cold echo of the walls. In the garden, the door to the tool shed was open, and inside her handkerchief was stuck to the handle. The nightmare now had a face. The gardener fell to his knees, his hands covered in dirt and fear. The rain began to fall again, mixing with the tears he didn't try to hold back. "You messed with the wrong past," his father's voice said in his head. But Antonio wouldn't be defeated. He silently swore that he would find Clara and end the Bastos family, his empire of lies, even if it cost him what was left of his life. The day dawned pale, and the sea roared like a caged beast. Antonio spent the early morning searching for clues about Clara. He searched every corner of the mansion, calling her name until his voice broke. In her room, on her bed, he found a blue satin ribbon, the same one she wore in her hair, and a short, hastily written note. "Trust no one. Find his diary." The handwriting was unmistakable. Clara was alive and trying to protect him. The words rekindled hope. Antonio remembered the audio tape he'd found days before with his father's voice. "His diary," he repeated. There was a secret passage in the greenhouse, mentioned in one of the gardening notebooks. He hurried out, crossing the lawn in the strong wind. The greenhouse smelled of damp earth and rust. He pulled back one of the floorboards and found a narrow staircase leading down into the darkness. He descended carefully, illuminating his way with a flashlight. The air below was heavy and cold, and the distant sound of the waves sounded like a lament. At the bottom of the stairs was a small stone room, old Bastos's true refuge. On a table sat a thick, leather-bound notebook covered in dust. In the corner, a candle still faded with age. Antonio lit it and opened the diary with trembling hands. The first pages were filled with gardening notes and studies of rare plants, but in the final pages, the writing changed. Helena slowly poisoned me. Lucio betrayed me. My family became a nest of snakes. The words seemed alive, vibrating with anger and fear. The diary recounted Helena's plan to take over the companies and eliminate the patriarch, and at the end, a warning: my true heir must seek the truth under the sea. As he read, a metallic sound echoed above, scuffling footsteps in the greenhouse. Antonio blew out the candle and held his breath. He saw a shadow cross the floor, slow and cautious. When the sound died away, he climbed the stairs and went out into the garden, looking around. The rain was starting again, thin as a veil. Near the fence, a blue scarf hung from a branch swayed. Clara had passed by. Following the trail, he reached the deserted road and found fresh tire tracks. An old car, perhaps the same one Lucio had driven, had left tracks all the way to the cliff. The sound of the waves was deafening. Between the rocks, he spotted something shining. Clara's necklace. His heart raced, but soon he heard a voice behind him. She's alive, but only for a short time. It was Heirveil, his gaze filled with guilt and fear. She tried to convince me to help you, the boy said, holding a gun with trembling hands. But they won't stop. Lucio wants to end it all tonight. He'll get rid of you both. Antonio stepped forward calmly. You don't have to be like them, Heirveil. Take me to her, and I swear this will end. The young man hesitated, tears mixing with the rain. She's in the old cottage on the dock. Together, they walked along the foggy road. The sound of the waves grew louder, and the old lighthouse illuminated the horizon like a weary eye. The cottage was dark, its windows boarded up. Inside, the smell of mildew and the sea filled the air, and there was Clara, tied to a chair, but alive. As Antonio approached, he heard the click of a gun behind him. Lucio was there, his face half hidden in shadow. Your father trusted me more than he should have, the lawyer said, his voice cold as steel. But now, I'm going to finish what he left unfinished. Heirveil stepped between them, trembling. You're not going to do that, Lucio. The lawyer laughed, cocking his gun. Then you'll die too. And before he could fire, a headlight beam flooded the cottage, and the truth began to emerge from the shadows. The headlight's glare invaded the cottage like a divine beam, revealing faces and sins. Lucio instinctively recoiled, the gun trembling in his hands. Antonio seized the second of distraction and advanced, striking the lawyer's arm with a piece of wood. The shot hit the ceiling, scattering sparks. Clara screamed, and Heirveil rushed to free her, cutting the ropes with a rusty razor. The fight was short but brutal. Lucio fell, trying to reach the gun that had fallen between the damp boards. Antonio grabbed him by the collar, his face pressed against his. You killed my father. The lawyer laughed, spitting blood. He killed himself by trusting me. Antonio tightened his grip. He considered you a brother. The man smiled crookedly. And you, the bastard son he never wanted. The punch that followed was sharp and definitive. Clara, trembling, hugged Antonio while Heirveil watched, speechless. Is it over? She asked, but the gardener shook his head. Not yet. There's something the diary didn't explain. He picked up the folder that had fallen to the floor and opened it to its pages. At the bottom was a crumpled map, with lines marking the coastline and a point marked near the ruins of the old pier. Father wrote that the truth was under the sea. I think he meant it literally. Hours later, the three of them walked along the cold sand, the wind cutting like blades. The sea roared furiously, but the low tide revealed ancient stones and scraps of wood, the remains of the pier that had collapsed years before. Antonio shone his flashlight on the ground until he found something metal buried in the mud. He knelt and dug with his hands until he exposed the edge of a rusted lid. A safe. The second one. With effort, they lifted the lid. Inside were documents sealed in plastic and a videotape marked Final Proof. There was also a photograph. Old Bastos and a young woman holding a baby. "My mother," Antonio whispered. Heirveil looked out to sea, shocked. "He kept everything here to protect it from us." Clara clutched the tape to her chest. "We have to see this before anyone finds out." Back at the mansion, the air seemed denser than ever. The wind howled at the windows, a warning that the worst storm was yet to come. Antonio inserted the tape into the library's old VCR. The screen hissed, and soon Mr. Bastos's face appeared, aged, tired, but lucid. "If you're seeing this, it's because the lawyer betrayed me. I left everything ready for my true heir." The old man took a deep breath during the recording. "Lucio embezzled millions with Helena's help. She wanted me dead, and he made sure justice never touched her. But I pretended to die and planned everything so my son Antonio would have what was rightfully his." His voice faltered, but his gaze was firm. "Wealth is just a symbol. The truth is what destroys them." The recording ended in static. Antonio stood still, his gaze fixed on the blank screen. Clara sobbed softly and Heirveil looked burdened with guilt. "My grandfather was alive. Until the end, he tried to protect you," the boy said, his eyes brimming with tears. The gardener stood slowly. "Now you understand why I want justice, not revenge." The distant sound of sirens began to echo. Helena had called the police, and this time the game would be deadly. As the car headlights illuminated the mansion's facade, Clara grabbed the folder and tape, hiding them under her coat. "We have to protect this." Antonio nodded. "Go around back with Heirveil. I'll take care of the rest." She hesitated, but obeyed. At the main gate, Helena appeared, surrounded by security guards. Her smile was icy. Then the gardener discovered too much. Antonio took a deep breath. "And you planted too many bad seeds." Helena lifted her chin proudly. "Do you think anyone will believe a bastard with dirty hands?" Antonio smiled calmly. "The earth may be dirty, but it's the earth that makes everything flourish." As the police approached, he raised his hands, but in his heart he knew the night wasn't over yet. In the background, the sea roared as if knowing the truth was about to fully emerge. Dawn fell over the city like a veil of smoke. Antonio was taken to testify, accused of trespassing, theft and forgery. Helena's words became law at the police station. "He manipulated my uncle and tried to take our inheritance," she said with false pity. The gardener, serene, simply watched as lawyer Lucio entered in handcuffs shortly after, wounded but still smiling. "We are two sides of the same coin," he said. Antonio didn't respond. Meanwhile, Clara and Heirveil waited outside, the tape and documents tucked into a backpack. The rain had fallen lightly again, disguising his nervousness. Heirveil lit a cigarette, shivering. "My aunt will kill you when she finds out you're with me." Clara looked at him steadily. "Then let her know. It's high time someone in this family did something right," he smiled sadly. "You sound like my grandfather." Inside the police station, the interrogation continued. "You admit to breaking and entering?" the inspector asked. "It was my house," Antonio replied. "And the proof that the will is false?" the man persisted. "The proof lies in the truth you haven't seen yet." The police officer laughed in disbelief, but before he could continue, another officer rushed in. "Doctor, we have a problem. The press has arrived, and with them, a video." Outside, a portable television broadcast the contents of the tape Clara had anonymously given to the press. Old Bastos's recording now spoke to the entire world. Helena's confession, the embezzlement, Lucio's betrayal. Cameras captured the chaos in the mansion as journalists gathered at the gates. The truth was finally emerging from the shadows. And for the first time, the word gardener appeared in the headline alongside legitimate heir. Helena, seeing the broadcast on the lobby television, smashed the remote control in anger. "That damned old woman!" she screamed, referring to Clara. The security guards tried to calm her down, but she pushed past them, running to the car. "I'll end this now." Lucio, handcuffed, smiled wryly. "She's always been more dangerous than me." Antonio looked at him, exhausted. "Then pray you don't cross her path again." Clara and Heirveil returned to the mansion to retrieve the remaining documents. The rain was getting heavier and thunder cracked the sky. "She'll come after us," Heirveil said worriedly. Clara held his hand. "It doesn't matter, there's no turning back now." When they entered the office, everything was ransacked. The safe, open again. On the table was an envelope bearing the family seal and a single sentence: "Blood pays for blood." Helena arrived minutes later, soaked, her face distorted with rage. "You destroyed my family," she screamed. Clara stood before her, not backing down. "No, Helena, you destroyed it alone." Heirveil stepped between them, crying, "Auntie, enough, enough is enough." She raised her gun, her hands shaking. "Get out of the way, Heirveil." But before she could shoot, the police arrived, surrounding the mansion. Fate was taking its toll. In the confusion, Helena was handcuffed, still shouting threats and promises of revenge. "None of this will erase the Bastos name," she said as she was led away through the rain. Antonio arrived soon after, brought by the police. When he saw Clara unharmed, relief made him smile. "You did it," she replied with a serene look. "It was your father who did it. The truth has blossomed just as he wanted." Hours later, the storm subsided, leaving a silence of sea and dawn. The mansion, now surrounded by vehicles and lights, seemed to breathe a sigh of relief. Antonio walked to the garden and knelt on the wet earth, where it all began. "Father, it's done." Clara approached, placing her hand on his shoulder. "The earth always gives back what is just." The gardener closed his eyes and let the wind tell the rest of the story. On the horizon, the sun began to rise timidly, gilding the ancient windows. The sea calmed, and the carp swam in tranquil circles again. For a moment, all seemed peaceful. But beneath the damp soil, hidden in the basement, something still waited. A safe, never opened, perhaps holding old Bastos' last words. The inheritance was safe, but the secrets, those still breathed. The calm after the storm seemed too false to be peace. The mansion was silent, but there was something pulsing beneath the walls, as if the place itself breathed memories. Antonio walked through the still damp hallways, the musty smell mingling with the sea air. The press was gone, the curious vanished, but the past still watched him, hidden behind every portrait. "Not everything is over," Clara murmured, lighting a candle. In the garden, dawn gilded the wet leaves, and the carp swam in lazy circles. Antonio looked at the greenhouse, now covered by a sheet of cracked glass, and felt the call of what remained unfinished. He remembered the diary's message. The real secret is where the flowers don't die. The greenhouse was the heart of that world, the father's refuge, and the final point of all secrets. Inside, the air still smelled of earth and rust. The shelves were covered in dust, but some plants were still alive, as if time had spared them. Antonio noticed that one of them, a white lily, was growing on a cracked stone. He crouched down and ran his hand over the ground, feeling something metallic underneath. "Clara!" he called. She ran to him, flashlight in hand. "I think I found another safe." Carefully, they removed the soil, revealing a small iron lid bearing the same Bastos family crest. The lock was stuck, but the golden key, the same one from the first note, fit perfectly. The click echoed in the greenhouse, and the lid opened with a sharp snap. Inside were an aged envelope, an audio tape, and a faded photograph. In the photo, the older Mr. Bastos sat in front of the same greenhouse. Antonio inserted the tape into the old recorder, and the familiar hiss filled the air. His father's voice sounded weak, tired, but filled with tenderness. "If you've come this far, my son, it's because you've overcome your fear. This greenhouse is the only place where truth grows without being crushed." A brief silence, and then, "Heirveil is your brother. He's the product of your second marriage, and his mother never knew about you. Protect him. He's innocent of the Bastos family's guilt." The words fell upon Antonio like stones. He stared at Clara in disbelief. "My brother?" The woman merely nodded, tears shining in her eyes. Now it all makes sense. The resemblance, the way he looks. Antonio leaned against the counter, his chest tight. "Father wanted to unite us, but Helena destroyed even that." The old man's voice continued, its tone a farewell. "If anything happens to me, know that I left a last will and testament, the real one. It's in the greenhouse, under the glass where the sun rises." Antonio stood and walked to the east wall of the greenhouse, where the cracked glass let in shafts of golden light. There, he found a small crack covered by old mortar. Using a tool, he broke through the plaster and found a wooden compartment. Inside, an envelope with its wax seal intact. His heart pounded. The real will, his father's last will. Opening it, she read, "I declare my son Antonio Rodriguez Bastos as the sole legitimate heir to my assets, lands, and businesses. And I order that the entire fortune be donated to charity and to the workers who have supported this family for generations." Clara covered her mouth, overcome with emotion. "He knew you would use it for good." Antonio smiled slightly, his eyes welling up. "My father didn't leave a fortune. He left a purpose." Suddenly, the sound of hurried footsteps cut through the silence. Heirveil appeared at the greenhouse door, his face pale. "Antonio, the lawyer ran away." The words echoed with the weight of the inevitable. "What do you mean, he ran away?" he asked, stunned. "Lucio was released from pre-trial detention. Helena paid someone, and now he's coming here." The wind blew harder, making the windows shake. Truth was free, but so was evil. Antonio put away the will and looked at Heirveil, his eyes serene and pained. "Then it's time to finish what your father started." The boy nodded, and together they left the greenhouse, the sun rising behind them. Clara stayed behind, watching them disappear down the stone path. The glow of the white lily reflected off the broken glass, and the wind swayed the flowers as if the mansion was finally breathing before the final war. Night fell without warning, bringing with it a storm that seemed to repeat fate. Lightning illuminated the Bastos mansion like flashes of an ancient memory. Inside, Antonio prepared the recorder and the documents on the table, the true will in his hands. Heirveil watched through the window, his eyes restless. "He's coming," he said. The sound of tires on gravel confirmed it. Lucio was there, ready for the final deal. The lawyer entered unannounced, his face illuminated by the lightning. "So it's true," he said hoarsely. "The bastard won." Antonio remained calm. "The truth won, and that scares you more than defeat." Lucio gave a cold smile. "Do you think the world cares about truth? Money talks louder." The gardener placed the will on the table. "Perhaps, but the voice of the earth is older than gold." Lucio stepped forward, pulling a gun from his coat. Heirveil stepped in, desperate. "Don't do this. Enough is enough." The lawyer shoved him hard, but the young man stood his ground. "He's your brother!" he shouted, echoing through the room. Lucio hesitated for a moment, and that was all it took for Antonio to disarm him with a precise blow. The gun fell, skidding across the marble floor. The three breathed heavily, the sound of rain hitting the glass. "It's over," said Antonio. "Nothing is over while I'm alive," replied Lucio, standing up. Suddenly, a shot rang out. Heirveil staggered, his shoulder bleeding. Clara, who had entered from the side, held a pistol in both hands. "You won't destroy what's left of this family." The lawyer fell to his knees, blood streaming from his lips. "You don't understand. He's still alive," he murmured, before collapsing lifelessly. The storm raged outside, the sound of thunder drowning out the last breath. Antonio ran to Heirveil, helping him to his feet. "You'll be fine, brother, I promise." Clara knelt beside him, tearing a piece of her dress to staunch the bleeding. "He just needs time." The gardener looked at Lucius's body and then at the will on the table. "It's truly over now." But the lawyer's words echoed like a curse. "He still lives." Antonio looked at Clara, his heart racing. What did he mean by that? She shook her head, confused. His father died 25 years ago. But before he could finish, a clap of thunder illuminated the far wall, and the reflection of an old face appeared briefly in the glass, watching the scene outside. A man in a grey suit with the same eyes as Mr. Bastos. Antonio ran to the window, but saw only the empty garden, the rain washing over the stones. "It can't be," he whispered. Heirveil, pale, tried to get up. "Did you see what I saw?" The gardener didn't answer. Outside, the greenhouse was lit from within, a soft yellow light impossible for it to be on. Clara took his hand. "Maybe the story isn't over yet." Together, the three walked to the garden, the rain beating down on their faces like a blessing and a warning. Inside the greenhouse, the white lily glowed with unearthly intensity, its petals open as if breathing light. And on the ground, beneath the disturbed earth, lay a clean envelope, dry despite the rain. Antonio picked it up, his hands trembling. On the back, a single sentence written in firm handwriting, "I never left." The wind blew, and the glass cracked, spreading the scent of wet earth and hope. The storm ceased suddenly, and the silence that followed was as deep as the sea. Antonio looked at Clara and Heirveil. "If he's still alive, then there's still something the past hasn't told us." She nodded. "And it's up to us to find out." The dawn light touched the faces of the three, heirs, survivors, and guardians of a story that stubbornly blossomed. The morning arrived serenely, as if the previous day's storm had washed the world clean. The sun reflected off the broken windows of the Bastos mansion, and the sound of the waves sounded like an ancient lament. Antonio watched the garden in silence, the letter with the words, "I never left," still in her hands. The paper was dry, untouched by the rain, and exuded the faint scent of jasmine, the same one her father used to wear. "He's alive, Clara. Somehow he is." Clara approached, her gaze firm but weary. "If he's alive, he doesn't want to be found. And perhaps we should let the past rest." Antonio shook his head. "The past never rests when it leaves open roots." Heirveil, still recovering from his injury, walked slowly. "I saw that face, Antonio. It wasn't a reflection. It was him." The silence between the three said more than any certainty. In the following days, authorities closed the inheritance case, and Antonio's name was finally cleared. Helena Bastos remained imprisoned, awaiting trial, and the family empire began to crumble without the weight of the lies that sustained it. Still, Antonio refused any fortune. "The money doesn't belong to me, the land does." And so, he began transforming the mansion into a shelter, a home for those who, like him, had been forgotten by life. Clara helped him restore the rooms by sewing curtains and painting the walls with soft colors. Heirveil, now a faithful ally, coordinated the work and donated part of what he had inherited from his mother. The mansion, once a symbol of greed, became a haven of kindness. But at night, when everyone was asleep, Antonio would return to the greenhouse, observing the white lily that never wilted. That flower seemed to breathe, as if it held old Bastos's soul. One morning, the wind blew differently. The windows opened, and the scent of jasmine filled the air. Antonio felt a presence behind him and turned slowly. A tall figure, with grey hair and a serene gaze, stood before the door. "Father," he whispered. The man didn't answer, he just smiled. Antonio's heart raced. He took a step forward, but the wind blew hard, and the figure disappeared into the shadows like smoke at dawn. In the days that followed, Clara noticed the change in him. "You seem distant," she said, handing him a cup of tea. "I'm thinking about something I can't help but think about." "What?" "Finding the body, or the man, whatever's left of him." Clara set the cup down. "What if this destroys you?" Antonio looked outside, where the sun gilded the trees. "Sometimes you have to die to understand why you lived." Heirveil appeared with unexpected news. "The police found a boat registration in your father's name. The document is recent, dated only 3 years ago." Antonio felt a shiver. 3 years? Old Bastos could be hiding somewhere, perhaps watching everything, waiting for the right moment to return. The doubt became a seed, and the seed became a decision. "I'll find him." The next morning, Antonio said goodbye to the mansion. Clara tried to stop him. "You've already fulfilled the destiny he left you. There's nothing more to prove." He smiled, touching her face tenderly. "I don't want to prove anything. I want to understand." He set off with Heirveil for the coast, where fishermen spoke of a lonely old man who lived in a hut and called himself Mr. St. John. The name sounded too simple for a man who carried so many secrets. The journey was long, and the sea seemed to recognize the Bastos blood. When they reached the cabin, they found open doors and fresh footprints in the sand. Inside, only a diary on the table and the same scent of jasmine. Antonio opened it, his hands trembling. The first page read, "My son, if you are reading this, it is because you have finally forgiven me." His heart raced, and cloudy tears blurred the letters. "Father." The last lines of the diary read, "I leave you truth and peace. The first hurts, the second frees. Take care of the earth, for it is where we live." Antonio closed the notebook, feeling the weight of love and farewell. He lived, and said goodbye in silence. Clara hugged him when he returned. "Now yes, everything is complete." Antonio looked at the sky, took a deep breath and smiled. "No, now it's just beginning." Time passed like the wind over the sea, slow but steady. The Bastos mansion, now called House of Roots, had become a shelter for the elderly, former employees and homeless families. The walls that once sheltered intrigue now held laughter and music. Antonio, wearing gloves and a hat, tended the garden as always. Only now the soil seemed to respond to him with gratitude. The white lily in the greenhouse continued to bloom, immortal. Clara ran the shelter with the firm gentleness of someone who knew both pain and healing. Heirveil taught young apprentices how to cultivate gardens, transforming the place into a haven of life. "You did what he dreamed," Clara said, watching Antonio plant new seedlings. "No, I just did what the earth asked," he replied. The wind blew lightly, and the scent of jasmine hung in the air. Old Bastos still seemed to be walking among the flowers. One afternoon, a mailman brought a letter with no return address. The envelope bore the same wax seal used on wills. Antonio opened it slowly. Inside was a simple handwritten note. "The roots are safe. Thank you for accomplishing what I could not." No signature, but the familiar scent was there. Clara watched him silently. "Do you believe it was him?" Antonio smiled slightly. "I believe the truth never dies. It just changes form." News of the mansion's transformation spread. The press now called it the gardener who planted justice, and Antonio's story became a symbol of forgiveness and hope. He avoided interviews, preferring the anonymity of the land and flowers. At night, he walked through the lamplit garden, hearing laughter from the open windows. It was as if the house breathed happiness for the first time in 100 years. But there was something more, a constant sense of presence. Sometimes Antonio would see shadows moving among the trees, and he wasn't afraid. He felt companionship. "Father," he would say as he laid flowers on the wet earth, You sowed pain, but you reaped love. The wind always responded gently, moving the leaves as if nature itself were listening. The garden, after all, was the truest testament of all. One night, during a party at the shelter, Heirveil handed her a small wooden box. I found this in the basement. It was behind the old boards. Inside was a golden key, identical to the first, but with a new inscription: "For the next one who makes it bloom." Antonio smiled in understanding. My father left the cycle open. Now, it's our turn to continue. The next day, he gathered everyone in the courtyard and handed the key to a young gardener named Elisa, an orphan who tended the plants with the same delicacy he had once possessed. "This house is yours now," she said. "Not in ownership, but in soul. Take care of it as if it were the world." The girl hugged him, her eyes shining. "I promise." Clara smiled, discreet tears streaming down her face. And so, the cycle begins again. In the afternoon, Antonio walked to the cliff where he had found his father's diary. The sea was calm, the sun setting in copper hues. "Father, the earth is alive, and so am I." The wind blew, and a last leaf fell from a nearby tree, landing at his feet. It was a petal from the white lily, still intact. He held it, smiling. Everything blooms in its time. When he returned to the mansion, the twilight streamed through the stained glass windows, coloring the hall in gold. Clara was waiting for him on the porch, and Heirveil was playing the guitar in the garden. The entire house seemed to pulse with life. Antonio looked around and realized that, finally, everything was at peace. "The inheritance wasn't the gold," he said, looking up at the sky. "It was what gold could never buy." And with that, the gardener smiled, letting time pass in silence. That night, the greenhouse glowed one last time, the lily releasing a soft fragrance before closing its petals. The wind carried the scent to the sea, where it was lost among the waves. On the floor, the key box remained open, and inside it, a new phrase engraved in fine letters: "Every seed is a new beginning." And so the story of the gardener and the missing billionaire ended, not with death, but with flowers. Winter arrived gently, bringing mists over the sea and long silences in the mornings. The Bastos mansion, now House of Roots, lived in harmony. The children played in the garden, the elderly told stories on the porches, and Clara cared for the shelter as if she were a mother to all. Antonio, though aging, still rose early to talk to the plants, his straw hat worn and the serene look of someone who had found peace. One afternoon, while overseeing renovations in the old basement, one of the bricklayers called out to him, "Mr. Antonio, come see this." The man's tone was a mixture of surprise and respect. In the darkest corner of the wall, beneath bricks that looked as if they'd never been touched, was a cavity covered in dust and cobwebs. An iron safe bearing the Bastos family coat of arms. The last one, the forgotten one. Fate was speaking to him again, after so many years of silence. The safe was rusty, and the lock seemed useless. Antonio ran his fingers over the symbol and felt his heart sink. "I thought I was finished with everyone," he murmured. Clara descended the stairs slowly, holding a lamp. "Perhaps the past still has something to say." He hesitated, but curiosity won out. If it's another truth, may it come without harm. The sound of metal breaking echoed like thunder in a cave. Inside was a wooden box wrapped in cloth and wax. Antonio opened it carefully, and a faint scent of jasmine escaped. Inside lay only a small diary and a yellowed letter. The handwriting was familiar, but shakier, more human. "For when the flowers grow again," it said in the first line. The diary chronicled old Bastos' final days after faking his own death, hiding in a fishing village. "I don't regret running away. I only regret not staying long enough to see my son plant what I destroyed." The following pages were filled with confessions and advice. The man spoke of love, guilt, and redemption. Inheritance isn't money. It's the time we give to those we love, and the time we steal when we choose power. Antonio closed the diary, overcome with emotion. Clara, beside him, wiped her eyes. He wrote this for you and for himself too. Yes, the gardener replied, smiling sadly, to remind us that even the wrong trees flourish if they are pruned with love. At the bottom of the box, there was also a small seed wrapped in thin paper with a handwritten sentence, "Plant where it all began." Antonio understood immediately. The next morning at sunrise, he went to the garden, chose the same patch where he had found the first note and dug with his bare hands. The earth smelled of memory. He buried the seed and covered it slowly, as if closing a cycle. "Let truth grow, not gold," he murmured. Months passed. The seed sprouted and grew faster than any ordinary plant. It was a tree with thin leaves and golden flowers whose color resembled the sun's glow on ancient glass. The children called it the Tree of Forgiveness. Beneath its shade, the shelter's residents gathered to tell stories, and at night, starlight seemed to rest on its branches. Antonio watched from afar, with his father's same smile on his lips. One morning, Elisa, the young gardener, found something on the ground beneath the tree. It was a gold medallion, identical to the one Mr. Bastos had left years ago. Inside was an old portrait, the elderly billionaire and Antonio, still a boy, holding hands in front of a newly tended garden. On the back, an engraved inscription, "Now we are roots of the same tree." The girl ran to hand him the medallion. Antonio held it tenderly and tearfully. "Yes, father, now we are." As the years passed, the garden flourished like never before. Casa das Raízes became a landmark for the entire country, a symbol of humanity and new beginnings. Journalists came, but Antonio always refused interviews. "The most beautiful stories don't need to be told, they just need to be lived." Clara laughed at this, calling him stubborn. "You're proof that even the most wounded soil can flourish." And he would respond, "Only because someone believed the truth deserved to grow." When the gardener finally departed on a serene spring morning, he was buried beneath the tree of forgiveness. On the simple gravestone was a phrase chosen by Clara: "Here rests he who turned inheritance into hope." The wind scattered golden petals over the tombstone, and the scent of jasmine filled the air, soft and eternal. It was as if old Bastos were waiting for him on the other side, smiling. Two men finally reconciled by time. Years later, when Elisa became the shelter's guardian, the forgotten safe was sealed again, now filled with letters, seeds, and portraits. And on the lid, she had a new phrase engraved for the future to find. "Every true story has roots that no one can pull up." The camera of memory would then move away, the sea in the background, the golden tree swaying, and the sun rising over the land where truth, at last, blossomed forever.